The flashbulbs popped like fireworks as Miles Thompson gripped the golden trophy, his palms slick with sweat despite the air-conditioned chill of the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles. Just that morning, a group text from his Texas relatives had lit up his phone with the familiar venom. "You're the shame of this family, Miles. How dare you drag our name into your lifestyle?" But now, as the applause thundered around him, he knew the speech he was about to deliver would leave them all speechless, their judgments hanging in the air like smoke. Jonathan sat in the second row, his eyes locked on Miles with that steady, unwavering support that had carried them through so many storms. The presenter handed over the microphone, and Miles took a deep breath, the weight of years pressing down on him. He scanned the crowd, wondering if any of his family had bothered to watch the live stream back home in their small town outside Austin. That morning had started like any other in their cozy apartment in Silver Lake. Miles had woken to the buzz of his phone, the Thompson family group chat exploding with messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins. "Miles, we saw the nomination. Please don't embarrass us further with your choices." One read. Another from his cousin. "The shame you bring to our name is unbearable. The church is praying for you to see the error of your ways." He had deleted the chat, but the words stung like fresh wounds. Jonathan had noticed his quiet mood over breakfast, the smell of fresh coffee filling their sunny kitchen. "Hey, ignore them. Tonight is your night," he had said, squeezing Miles' hand across the table, his thumb tracing small circles that always grounded him. The two men had shared a quiet moment, Jonathan's touch reminding Miles why he had fought so hard to build this life. The drive to the Dolby Theater was filled with nervous energy. Miles fidgeted with his tie in the passenger seat, while Jonathan navigated the traffic on the 101 freeway, the Hollywood sign looming in the distance like a promise. "You deserve this, Miles. Your story is important," Jonathan said, his voice calm and reassuring, one hand resting lightly on the gear shift. Miles nodded, but inside, the doubts swirled like the city smog outside the car window. Was he really ready to face the world with his truth on full display? The film Whispers of Truth had been his most personal work yet, drawing from his own life in ways that made him vulnerable. Critics had praised it for its raw honesty about love between men in a world that still judged, but he knew it would ruffle feathers back home in Texas, where his father's church sermons still echoed in his memory. As they arrived, the red carpet was a blur of reporters and flashing lights, the evening air warm and buzzing with excitement. Miles posed with Jonathan by his side, their hands brushing in a subtle show of solidarity that felt both bold and natural after 6 years together. "How does it feel to be nominated for such a personal project?" one reporter asked, microphone thrust forward. Miles smiled, his heart steady for the first time that day. "It's liberating. It's about showing that love comes in all forms, and family isn't always defined by blood." The words felt empowering, but the undercurrent of family rejection lingered like a shadow he could never quite shake. Inside the theater, the atmosphere was electric, celebrities mingling in designer suits and gowns. But Miles kept close to Jonathan, drawing strength from the man who had never once asked him to hide. As the category for Best Original Screenplay approached, Miles' heart raced like it had during his first coming-out conversation a decade earlier. When his name was called, the world seemed to slow down. He rose to his feet, Jonathan's proud smile the only thing keeping him steady as the applause swelled. Walking to the stage felt like crossing a bridge he had built one painful step at a time. He accepted the trophy, its weight solid and real in his hands, and faced the microphone. The speech he had practiced in the mirror for weeks now waited on his tongue, ready to change everything. But before he spoke, a flood of memories rushed in. The day his father had slammed the door on him, the lonely nights in cheap Los Angeles motels, the first time Jonathan had said, "I love you," under the stars on a Griffith Park hike. Those moments had shaped him, turning shame into strength. He cleared his throat, the room hushed in anticipation. "Thank you to the Academy for this incredible honor. This award isn't just for me. It's for every person who has ever been told they are the shame of their family because of who they love." The audience murmured in agreement, a wave of empathy rolling through the seats. He looked straight into the camera, knowing it was streaming live to thousands, including perhaps the very people who had labeled him. To my partner, Jonathan, who has been my rock through every doubt and fear, I love you more than words can say. And to my family back in Texas, if you're watching, I hope this shows you that love isn't a shame. It's the greatest strength we have. The room erupted in applause, but Miles knew the real reaction was happening miles away. His phone would be blowing up soon, but for now, he stepped off the stage into Jonathan's arms backstage, the weight lifting just a bit as they held each other tight amid the chaos of congratulations. Yet even in that victory, Miles felt the pull of unfinished business. The relatives who had cut him off years ago still haunted his thoughts, their voices louder than the cheers around him. Jonathan whispered in his ear, "You did it. You faced them without even being in the same room." Miles nodded, but deep down he wondered if one speech could ever bridge the chasm he had lived with for so long. The night was young, the celebration just beginning, but the true test of his growth was only starting. Backstage hugs and handshakes blurred into a whirlwind as producers and fellow nominees clapped Miles on the back, their praise genuine and warm. Jonathan stayed close, his hand resting lightly on Miles' lower back, a silent anchor in the storm of success. "Let's get out of here soon," Jonathan murmured, his breath warm against Miles' ear. "I want you all to myself tonight." Miles smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing for the first time in weeks, but his mind kept drifting to Texas. He could picture his mother staring at the television in their modest living room, his father pacing with clenched fists, the aunts whispering over the phone. The words family shame echoed again, but this time they felt smaller, less powerful against the glow of the trophy in his hands. The after-party at a sleek rooftop venue in downtown Los Angeles stretched late into the night. String lights twinkled above the crowd, and the city skyline sparkled like a promise fulfilled. Miles and Jonathan stood near the edge, champagne glasses in hand, the cool breeze carrying laughter and music. "Remember when we first met in that coffee shop?" Jonathan asked, his eyes soft with nostalgia. Miles laughed softly. "How could I forget? You were grading papers, looking all serious, and I spilled coffee all over your table trying to impress you with some dumb line about screenwriting." They had talked for hours that day, Jonathan sharing stories of his students in New York and Miles confessing his dreams of telling stories that mattered. That conversation had been the start of everything, a partnership built on honesty when Miles had been running from lies. But the path to this rooftop had been anything but smooth. After leaving Texas, Miles had crashed on friends' couches for months, working odd jobs as a barista and delivery driver while writing late into the night. Rejections piled up like unpaid bills. One studio executive had even said, "Your voice is strong, but the gay angle is too niche for mainstream." Those words had cut deep, feeding the voice in his head that sounded exactly like his father's. Jonathan had been the one to pull him out of that darkness. When Miles hit his lowest, doubting every word he wrote, Jonathan had sat with him on the floor of their first tiny apartment, reading drafts aloud and reminding him, "Your story isn't niche, it's necessary." Their love had become Miles' quiet rebellion against the shame his family tried to brand him with. A sudden vibration in Miles' pocket pulled him back to the present. The phone screen lit up with missed calls, his cousin Sarah, then his mother. He silenced it, but Jonathan noticed. "You don't have to answer tonight," he said gently. "We've earned this moment." Miles nodded, slipping the phone away, yet the pull was there. He remembered the last time he had tried to reach out, 2 years ago, sending his mother a birthday card with a simple note, "I'm happy, Mom. I hope you can be happy for me too." The card had come back unopened. That rejection had nearly broken him, but Jonathan had been there, suggesting they take a weekend trip to Big Sur to clear his head. They had walked the cliffs, talked about the future, and Miles had realized that family could be chosen, not just inherited. As the party wound down, they drove home through the quiet streets, the trophy resting on the back seat like a silent witness. Inside their apartment, Jonathan pulled Miles into a gentle hug, the kind that said more than words ever could. "I'm proud of you," he whispered, "not just for the award, but for who you've become." Miles closed his eyes, letting the warmth sink in. Yet sleep didn't come easily. He lay awake, replaying the speech, wondering if his words had landed like a stone in still water back in Texas. The next morning brought the first crack in the silence. His mother's text arrived at dawn. "We saw it. Your father hasn't said a word since." Miles stared at the screen, heart racing. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, the first thread of connection after years of silence. Jonathan made coffee, sensing the shift. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The days that followed blurred with interviews and meetings. Miles sat in sleek offices pitching his next project. But his mind kept returning to the family he had left behind. A lunch with his old college friend Alex turned tense when Alex admitted, "Some of your cousins have been posting online again, calling the speech attention-seeking." The betrayal stung, not from strangers but from blood. Miles had always thought distance would dull the pain, but it only sharpened the questions. How much of his success was still tied to proving them wrong? Jonathan noticed the distraction during dinner one evening. "You're carrying them with you," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time to decide what you want from them, or if you even need anything anymore." The conversation lingered late, honest and raw, forcing Miles to confront how deeply the label of shame had shaped his choices. By the end of the week, another call came. This time from his younger brother, Ethan, who had always been the quiet one in the family. "I watched the speech, Miles. It made me think about a lot of things I never said." The voice cracked slightly, revealing years of unspoken support. Miles felt a surge of hope mixed with caution. Jonathan listened from the kitchen, giving him space but staying close. That night, as they walked their neighborhood streets under the palm trees, Miles realized the journey wasn't just about the award. It was about the slow, painful rebuilding of identity beyond other people's judgments. The city lights reflected in Jonathan's eyes, and for the first time in days, Miles felt truly seen, not as the family shame, but as the man he had fought to become. Yet the road ahead still held shadows, and the real confrontation was only beginning. The conversation with Ethan lingered like a fragile bridge over a deep canyon. Miles replayed it during his morning runs along the Los Angeles River path, the rhythmic pounding of his feet matching the questions in his head. Ethan had always been the peacemaker, the one who sent secret birthday texts even after the family cut off. "Dad's been different since the speech," Ethan had said. "He watches your movie clips on his phone when he thinks no one's looking." The admission cracked something open in Miles, a mix of anger and longing he had buried for years. Jonathan joined him on one run, matching his pace without pushing for details until they stopped at their favorite bench overlooking the water. "You're allowed to want them back in your life," Jonathan said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But you don't owe them your peace." Miles nodded, but the internal tug-of-war intensified. Work offered a temporary escape. Meetings with producers about adapting Whispers of Truth into a limited series kept him busy. Yet every script note felt personal. One executive suggested softening the family conflict scenes. "Make it more universal," she said. Miles pushed back politely but firmly. "The specificity is what makes it universal. Hiding the truth didn't work for me in real life, and it won't work here." The meeting ended on a positive note, but the exchange reminded him of his old agent Derek's betrayal 3 years earlier. Derek had leaked details of Miles' relationship to a tabloid during early negotiations, hoping to humanize him for investors. The article had painted Jonathan as a distraction, nearly costing Miles a major deal. The misunderstanding had spiraled when Jonathan saw the headline and assumed Miles had agreed to the spin. They had fought for days, Jonathan packing a bag before Miles begged him to stay. "I would never hide you," Miles had sworn that night, tears mixing with rain on their balcony. That sacrifice, choosing integrity over money, had nearly broken them, but it had also forged a deeper trust. A weekend trip to Joshua Tree National Park gave them space to breathe. They hiked the rocky trails under a vast blue sky, the desert heat mirroring the intensity of their talks. Jonathan shared his own struggles from his teaching days in New York, where parents had questioned his influence on students after he came out at work. "I almost quit," he admitted over a campfire that night, stars thick above them. But I realized running away would mean letting them define me. Miles listened, the crackling fire warming his face as he opened up about the family gatherings he missed. Thanksgiving pies, backyard barbecues, the way his mother used to hum hymns while cooking. They called me shame so many times I started believing it, he confessed. Jonathan pulled him close, the embrace steady and sure. You're not their definition. You're ours. The trip became a turning point, a quiet awakening that love could be both anchor and compass. Back in the city, reality intruded with a phone call from Sarah, the cousin who had been most vocal online. Her voice was hesitant, nothing like the confident tone in her posts. Miles, I saw the speech. I didn't know it hurt you that much. We were just repeating what Dad said. The apology was clumsy, laced with excuses, but it was the first crack in the wall. Miles listened without interrupting, Jonathan sitting nearby with a supportive hand on his knee. I'm not asking for anything, Miles replied. But if you want to talk, really talk, I'm here. The call ended awkwardly, yet it planted a seed. That evening, Miles and Jonathan cooked dinner together. The simple act of chopping vegetables and sharing stories a reminder of the home they had built despite everything. Internal conflict still simmered. Miles found himself scrolling old family photos late one night, the glow of the laptop screen casting shadows across the room. Jonathan woke and joined him on the couch. You're spiraling, he said softly. Tell me what you need. Miles admitted the fear that success had made him arrogant, that maybe the family was right about him abandoning roots. Jonathan listened, then shared a story from his own past. A brother who had distanced himself after Jonathan came out, only to reach out years later after a health scare. People change at their own pace, he said. But you can't pause your life waiting. The conversation stretched into the early hours. Misunderstandings cleared and new understandings formed. By morning, Miles felt lighter, the shame label fading like morning mist. Yet society's pressures remained. At a networking event, a fellow writer pulled Miles aside. Your win is inspiring, but watch the agenda talk. Some funders still shy away. The comment echoed old prejudices, stirring the internal crisis Miles thought he had outgrown. He excused himself and called Jonathan from the restroom, voice tight. It never really ends, does it? Jonathan's calm reply grounded him again. It doesn't, but neither do we. That support became the foundation for the next step. Miles deciding to invite Ethan for a visit to Los Angeles. The choice felt like a risk, a pivotal decision that could reopen old wounds or heal them. As he booked the ticket, Miles realized growth wasn't linear. It was a series of choices, each one carving space for the man he was becoming. Jonathan met him at the door that night with a smile, and together they stepped into whatever came next, hand in hand. Ethan's arrival at LAX felt like stepping into a parallel universe. The younger brother Miles, remembered as a shy teenager, now stood taller, carrying a duffel bag and an uncertain smile. They hugged awkwardly at first, years of silence making the embrace feel both familiar and foreign. Jonathan waited in the car, giving them space, but his presence in the driver's seat offered quiet reassurance. On the drive to Silver Lake, conversation stayed light, baseball scores, Ethan's new job at a hardware store back home. But tension hummed beneath the surface. Miles could see the questions in Ethan's eyes, the same ones he had carried for years. That first evening, the three men sat on the balcony with takeout Thai food, the city lights twinkling below. Ethan finally spoke the words that had traveled across state lines. Dad watches your interviews on mute. Mom cries when she thinks no one sees. The admission hung in the warm night air. Miles felt the old anger rise, but Jonathan's steady gaze helped him breathe through it. I didn't make the speech to hurt anyone, Miles said. I made it because hiding almost destroyed me. Ethan nodded slowly, admitting he had defended Miles quietly at family dinners, only to be shut down. The conversation stretched late, misunderstandings unraveling like old knots. Ethan confessed a betrayal he had witnessed, a cousin forwarding private messages from Miles' early LA days to the family group chat, twisting them into proof of the lifestyle ruining everything. Miles absorbed the hurt, but sharing it with Jonathan and Ethan lightened the load. The next day, they toured Los Angeles like tourists in Miles' own city. Ethan marveled at the beach in Santa Monica, the three of them walking the pier as waves crashed below. Jonathan shared stories of his students, how he taught literature that challenged norms, and Ethan listened with genuine interest. Over ice cream, Ethan asked the question Miles had dreaded. "Do you ever miss home?" Miles paused, the salty breeze tugging at his shirt. "I miss parts of it, but I couldn't be who I am there." The honesty opened a door. Ethan revealed his own quiet struggles with faith and identity, admitting the family's rigid views had stifled him too. The moment felt like a small miracle, two brothers finding common ground across the divide their parents had built. Back at the apartment, a video call from their mother interrupted dinner. Her face filled the screen, eyes tired but searching. "Miles, I saw the speech again. Your words about love stayed with me." Tears welled as she spoke, the first crack in her silence. Jonathan stepped out to give privacy, but Miles kept him on speaker later, needing his strength. The call was short and halting, full of pauses and careful words, yet it carried hope. Afterward, Miles sat with Jonathan on the couch, processing the mix of relief and lingering pain. "She's trying," Jonathan said softly. "That's more than before." Miles nodded, but the internal crisis deepened. Was reconciliation possible without erasing the years of rejection? A misunderstanding threatened to derail the progress. Ethan received a frantic call from their father midway through the visit. "Your brother is filling your head with lies." The voice boomed through the speaker. Ethan stood his ground for the first time, defending Miles and the life he had built. The argument echoed through the apartment, leaving everyone shaken. Jonathan mediated with calm wisdom, suggesting they all take a breath. That night, the three men talked until dawn, Ethan sharing how the family's pressure had affected his own relationships. The conversation revealed layers of sacrifice. Miles had given up holidays and childhood traditions, but Ethan had sacrificed his voice for years. The awakening was mutual, a shared realization that love demanded courage from everyone. As Ethan's visit ended, the airport goodbye carried new weight. "Come back any time," Miles said, hugging his brother tightly. Ethan promised to keep the lines open, a small but significant step. Watching the plane take off, Miles leaned into Jonathan, the ocean breeze from the nearby runway carrying a sense of possibility. "You handled that with grace," Jonathan said. Miles smiled, feeling the growth in his bones. Yet societal pressures loomed again when a magazine article appeared online, quoting anonymous family sources, calling the award a publicity stunt for his lifestyle. The betrayal cut deep, but this time Miles refused to let it define him. He and Jonathan spent the evening planning a quiet getaway to Mendocino, a deliberate choice to protect their peace. The trip became another turning point. Long walks on rugged cliffs, honest talks about the future, and a renewed commitment to the life they had chosen. Miles realized the journey wasn't about winning back the past but building a future strong enough to withstand it. With Jonathan beside him, every step forward felt like victory. The Mendocino coast offered the breathing room Miles needed. Waves crashed against jagged rocks as he and Jonathan hiked the headlands, the salty air clearing the fog of family drama. Jonathan had taken a few days off from teaching, and they rented a small cabin with a wood-burning stove and views that stretched forever. One evening, wrapped in blankets on the porch, Miles finally voiced the fear that had grown since Ethan's visit. "What if trying to fix things with them costs us what we have?" Jonathan turned to him, firelight dancing in his eyes. "It won't, because we choose each other first." The simple truth settled something deep inside Miles, a pivotal decision forming. He would reach out to his father on his own terms, not out of desperation but strength. The call happened the next morning, Miles pacing the cabin while Jonathan waited outside with coffee. His father answered after 4 rings, voice gruff but not hostile. "Miles." Just the name carried years of weight. Miles spoke carefully, sharing the impact of the speech and the award without accusation. "I'm not asking you to agree with everything. I'm asking you to see me." The silence stretched, then his father replied, "I watched the movie. It wasn't what I expected. No apology, but no rejection either, a small door opening. Miles ended the call with a steady voice, stepping outside to Jonathan's waiting arms. The embrace felt like coming home, the romantic happiness they had fought for blooming in the quiet moment. Back in Los Angeles, life accelerated. A major studio offered Miles a development deal, but the contract included a clause about public image management. The subtle pressure echoed Derek's old betrayal, stirring old doubts. Miles turned it down without hesitation, choosing integrity over opportunity, another sacrifice that strengthened his resolve. Jonathan celebrated the decision with a special dinner, cooking Miles' favorite pasta and toasting to choices that mattered. "You keep choosing us," Jonathan said, raising his glass. "That's the real win." Their evening turned into a night of deep conversation and quiet joy, the kind of romantic connection that had sustained them through every storm. A misunderstanding with a close friend tested them again. Alex, the college buddy who had spread rumors years earlier, reached out wanting to apologize in person. The lunch meeting grew tense when Alex admitted the family had paid him to share details. Miles felt the sting of betrayal anew, but Jonathan encouraged forgiveness on Miles' terms. "Holding on to it only hurts you," he advised during a late-night talk. Miles chose understanding over anger, a conscious step toward the man he wanted to be. The decision brought unexpected peace, freeing energy for the future. As weeks passed, small changes rippled from Texas. Ethan sent photos of family dinners where Miles' film was discussed openly. His mother mailed a care package with homemade cookies and a note, "Thinking of you." Each gesture chipped away at the shame label until it felt like a distant memory. Miles and Jonathan took a weekend in San Francisco, walking the Golden Gate Bridge hand in hand, the city's vibrant energy mirroring their growth. There, under a clear sky, Miles proposed they move to a bigger place, a symbol of the life they were building together. Jonathan accepted with tears and laughter, their kiss full of promise and happiness. The true high point arrived at a small private screening of Whispers of Truth for friends and select family. Ethan flew in, and to everyone's surprise, their mother appeared at the last minute. She sat quietly through the film, then approached Miles afterward with trembling hands. "I was wrong to call you shame," she whispered. "Your love is beautiful." The words hung in the air, transforming years of pain into understanding. Jonathan stood beside him, proud and steady, as Miles hugged his mother for the first time in over a decade. The moment was raw, emotional, and profoundly healing. Not perfect, but real. That night, back home, Miles and Jonathan celebrated quietly, their embrace under the city lights a perfect blend of romance and triumph. The journey had tested every part of them, but it had also revealed their greatest strength, choosing love again and again. The following months wove the new threads into their daily life. Miles' mother visited Los Angeles twice, each trip easier than the last. She met Jonathan properly over coffee, her initial stiffness melting into genuine curiosity about his teaching stories. Ethan joined for one trip, and the four of them spent a day at the Getty Museum, laughter replacing old silences. Miles' father remained distant, but he sent a short text after the second visit. "Glad you're doing well. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to prove change was possible." Jonathan remained the constant, his quiet support turning every milestone into shared joy. One crisp autumn evening, Miles and Jonathan hosted a small gathering in their new home, a cozy house in the hills with a backyard perfect for quiet evenings. Friends mingled with Ethan and Miles' mother, the atmosphere warm and easy. As the sun set, painting the sky in vibrant oranges, Miles pulled Jonathan aside onto the deck. "None of this would have happened without you," he said, voice thick with emotion. Jonathan smiled, pulling him into a tender embrace, the kind that spoke of years of partnership and unwavering love. They stood there, the city lights twinkling below, two American men who had faced prejudice, betrayal, and doubt yet emerged stronger. The romantic happiness Miles had once only dreamed of now felt like home. Reflection came naturally during a quiet morning walk with Jonathan through nearby trails. Miles realized the award speech had been the spark, But the real transformation happened in the small choices. Turning down deals that demanded hiding, choosing honesty with Ethan, opening the door to his mother. The internal crisis that once defined him had evolved into quiet confidence. Societal pressures still existed, but they no longer controlled him. Jonathan's hand in his felt like proof that love between men could thrive despite everything. The family's evolution continued in small, meaningful ways. Cousins sent messages of congratulations on new projects. The church group back home even discussed the film in a book club, according to Ethan. Miles no longer needed their approval, but the acceptance brought unexpected peace. He finished a new script, this one lighter, inspired by the journey of rebuilding family on new terms. Jonathan read the first draft and simply said, "This is you whole and free." Their life together deepened, filled with ordinary moments that felt extraordinary. Cooking together, planning future trips, supporting each other's dreams. As the year drew to a close, Miles stood on the same award stage balcony where it all began, this time for a different event. Jonathan by his side. He looked out over the city that had become their foundation. The man once branded the family's shame now stood tall, his story a testament to growth, sacrifice, and the power of choosing love. The speech that had stunned his relatives had done more than silence them. It had opened doors none of them expected. True or false? A single public moment of courage can truly rewrite years of family rejection and prejudice?